Someone is harvesting fresh fruit off a tree sitting in a 5-gallon bucket on their back porch right now, and they're eating better than their neighbor who dropped $2,000 on a full orchard planted in the ground. That's not luck. That's not a gimmick. That's what happens when you understand something most people never get told. Your harvest size has almost nothing to do with how much land you own. It comes down to choosing the right plants, the right containers, and knowing a few things the nursery tags never bother to mention. So here's what we're doing today on my channel. 21 fruit trees and plants that don't just survive in a container, they genuinely thrive in one. Some of these will feed your family. A few will save you serious money every single year at the grocery store. And the one sitting at number 1 is the only plant on this entire list that can actually put cash in your pocket, not just food on your table. We're also going to call out the ones that trip up beginners, including one that almost everyone plants the wrong way and then spends years wondering why they never see a single piece of fruit. Let's get into it, starting at 21. 21. Grapes. Most people hear grapes and picture a massive vineyard. Forget that image. There's a true dwarf variety called the pixie grape that stays under 2 feet tall, fruits in its very first year, and fits comfortably in a 5-gallon pot. Researchers at Michigan State have documented it, barely any pruning required. The catch is the grapes themselves are small, closer in size to a currant than a table grape. It is a wonderful learning plant, but it will not fill your freezer. If you want real eating grapes, you need a standard variety in a 15 to 20-gallon container that is at least 16 inches deep. A healthy, established vine in the right pot can yield around 15 pounds of fruit once it hits its stride. Grapes demand full sun, 6 to 8 hours minimum, and soil that drains fast. 2 mistakes finish off most beginner grape growers. First, overwatering. Grapes despise sitting in wet soil. Second, skipping pruning, which gives you a gorgeous wall of leaves and almost no fruit. One tip nobody talks about, skip the black pot. It turns into an oven in summer and cooks the roots. And in winter, water your potted vine once a month even when it looks completely dead. Those roots are still alive underground, and letting them go bone dry is what actually kills container grapes. 20. Goji berries. You have seen them in little dried bags at health food stores with price tags that sting. You can grow your own in a pot for roughly what one of those bags costs. Goji is a tough, determined shrub. It handles cold all the way down to zone 3 and heat into zone 10, which means it grows in almost any part of the country. Give it a 10 to 20-gallon container and a stake or small trellis because it wants to sprawl and climb. Here is the part that catches people off guard, so pay attention. Goji is the opposite of most berries. It does not want acidic soil, it wants alkaline conditions, up around 7 to 8 on the pH scale. If you treat it like a blueberry, you will fail. Work a little garden lime into the mix and it will reward you. It also needs plenty of sun, 8 hours or more, and once it settles in, it is remarkably drought tolerant. The biggest killer is overwatering. Let it dry out between drinks. You might see a handful of berries in the first year, but the real harvest shows up in year 2 and 3. Fresh goji berries are something you essentially cannot purchase anywhere. Stores only carry them dried. Growing your own gets you a fruit your neighbors have genuinely never tasted fresh. 19. Gooseberries and currants. These are old-timers that your grandparents probably grew, and there's actually a legal wrinkle worth knowing about. In certain states, these plants are restricted or outright prohibited because they were historically linked to a disease affecting white pine trees. Many of those rules are still active. Do 30 seconds of research on your own state before buying. Some nurseries will not even ship to certain regions. If you are cleared to grow them, these plants are outstanding. A variety like Pixwell gooseberry is nearly thornless, extraordinarily cold-hardy, and practically bulletproof. Red Lake is the go-to for red currants. Both are self-fertile, so a single plant in a 5 to 10-gallon pot will fruit on its own. Expect a modest crop in year 2, full production around year 4 or 5, and the plant keeps delivering for 15 to 20 years. They appreciate full sun, but in hot climates they benefit from some afternoon shade. What they cannot stand is hot, still, humid air with no airflow. That is when you get powdery mildew. Give them room to breathe. Each late winter, prune out the oldest. The best fruit always comes on younger wood, and that one habit keeps an aging bush producing like a young one. 18. Mulberries. Nobody talks about these, and that is genuinely a shame. A dwarf mulberry might be the most underrated fruit on this entire list. There is a variety called dwarf everbearing that will grow happily in a pot as small as 8 to 10 inches and will fruit the very first year you plant it. Issai is another excellent option with slightly larger berries.
Both are self-fertile, so you only need one. Buy a rooted plant rather than seeds so you are not waiting forever. Everbearing means what it says. Instead of dumping all its fruit in a single week, it produces steadily over a long stretch of the season. You are grabbing a handful every few days for weeks on end. The berries are small, about half an inch across, so do not expect to fill buckets. But here is what makes mulberries special. It fruits on new growth. Every time you prune it back to keep it compact, you trigger a fresh round of berry production. You can keep one under 2 feet tall and still pick fruit all summer long. Do not overfeed it. Heavy nitrogen fertilizing gives you lush foliage and almost no berries. Full sun, slightly acidic and well-draining soil. In colder zones, tuck the pot into an unheated garage through winter. Fresh mulberries cannot be purchased in stores. They are too fragile to ship. The only way to taste one is to grow it yourself. 17. Olive trees. Picture a silver-leafed olive tree sitting on your porch with that classic Mediterranean look. The variety to buy is Arbequina. It stays compact, it pollinates itself, and it is the one most commonly grown for both table olives and pressing oil. Start it in a 15 to 20-inch container. In zones 8 through 11, it is comfortable outdoors, tolerating temperatures down to around 20 degrees. Anywhere colder, you grow it in a pot and bring it inside when winter arrives. Here is the honest truth the marketing tends to skip over. An olive tree kept as a permanent indoor plant is mostly decorative. Without wind and pollinators moving pollen around, it will not set much fruit. Outdoors in full sun, a mature tree can produce a real crop, 20 pounds or more from a good-sized specimen. So if fruit is your goal, get it outside in the sun for the season, at least 6 hours daily. Give the branches a gentle shake when it flowers or brush the blossoms yourself to move pollen. Olives love dry conditions. This is a Mediterranean plant through and through. Overwatering is the fastest way to kill one. Let the soil dry out between waterings. One thing you must know before you bite into a fresh olive off the tree: they are intensely bitter and inedible straight off the branch. They require curing in brine or water first. That is just part of the deal. 16. Pineapple guava. Also sold under the name feijoa, this plant sounds tropical, but it is tougher than its exotic reputation suggests. It's an evergreen with striking flowers, and it tolerates cold down to around 10 degrees, which consistently surprises people. The flavor is genuinely unusual, something like pineapple combined with mint and strawberry at the same time. And here's a fun bonus: the flower petals are completely edible and taste remarkably sweet, almost like cotton candy. You can snack on the blooms and still get fruit later. Pollination is where you need to focus. If space allows only one plant, choose the Coolidge variety. It is the most reliably self-fertile option available. Most other feijoa varieties produce only a small amount of fruit on their own and really benefit from a second variety nearby for cross-pollination. Nikita is a nice compact option that stays around 6 feet and suits a large pot well. It wants full sun to about half a day of sunlight, well-draining soil, and consistent moisture. Let it dry out hard and it will drop its developing fruit before you can harvest it. Allow 3 to 4 years before expecting a meaningful crop, worth the wait for something almost no one else on your street is growing. 15. Elderberry. You've seen elderberry syrup at the pharmacy selling for steep prices. You can grow the whole plant yourself in a large container. The variety worth tracking down is Bob Gordon. It originated from a wild selection in Missouri and was released through the University of Missouri. It outproduces older varieties by a noticeable margin, and its heavy berry clusters hang downward, which actually does a reasonable job of concealing them from birds. Here is a warning you must take seriously. Raw elderberries will make you genuinely sick. Unripe berries, leaves, and stems are all toxic. Elderberries must be fully cooked before consumption. Cook them into syrup or jam and they are wonderful. Eat them raw and you will regret it. Respect that single rule and you are fine. One more critical point: elderberry is only partially self-fertile. Plant 2 different varieties near each other for a real crop. A single isolated bush will not give you much worth harvesting. It is extraordinarily cold hardy, zones 3 through 9, down to 30 below. It tolerates full sun and handles damp spots better than most fruiting plants. Light production in year 2 or 3, full production by year 4 or 5. A tip worth remembering: Bob Gordon fruits on the current season's growth. In cold climates, you can cut the entire plant back to the ground in winter and still get berries the following season. Net it before the berries ripen or birds will strip it clean overnight. 14. Honeyberry. Also called haskup, this plant survives temperatures past 40 below zero and ripens 2 to 3 weeks earlier than strawberries. While the rest of your garden is barely waking up, you are already picking fruit. The berries resemble elongated blueberries and taste like a blend of blueberry and raspberry. Here is the single most important fact about honeyberry, and the plant tags almost never make it clear enough. One honeyberry plant will not fruit, period. These cannot pollinate themselves. You must plant 2 different varieties that bloom at the same time. The University of Saskatchewan, which developed most of the best varieties available, is completely clear about this. Aurora paired with honeybee is a proven combination. Put both in 2 large pots placed side by side. If you buy only one because it looked appealing at the nursery, you will wait years for fruit that never arrives. They need full sun, ordinary well-draining soil, and about an inch of water per week. They are not picky about pH. Small amounts of fruit in year 1 or 2, full production by year 3 or 4. Then they keep going for 30 years. A picking tip that will save you sour disappointment. Do not judge ripeness by color. The skin turns blue long before the interior is actually ripe. Cut one open. If the flesh inside is deep purple all the way through, it is ready. 13. Container nectarines. Sounds like a stretch until you hear the key phrase, genetic dwarf. Necta-Z and Necta-Babe are true genetic dwarfs. They stay around 5 to 6 feet tall on their own regardless of pruning. They are self-fertile and they are built for large containers. Think a half wine barrel, roughly 27 gallons. Do not buy a regular nectarine on a dwarfing rootstock by mistake. That tree wants to grow 10 or 12 feet tall and it will fight you every step of the way. A genetic dwarf is a completely different plant. These trees set an almost excessive amount of fruit for their size, which means thinning is essential. Pull off a significant portion of the baby fruits in spring. It feels wrong to remove fruit, but if you skip this step, you end up with 100 small, flavorless nectarines instead of a couple dozen large, juicy ones. Thinning is what makes the difference. Full sun and well-draining soil are non-negotiable. Like all stone fruit, they need a stretch of actual winter cold to bloom properly, so they cannot live indoors year-round. In cold climates, their compact size works in your favor. You can wheel the whole pot into a shed when temperatures drop, or cover the blossoms if a late frost threatens. Watch for peach leaf curl and handle it with a dormant season spray. A nectarine ripened on the tree tastes nothing like one shipped across the country. 12. Baby cakes blackberry. Fresh blackberries rank among the most expensive items in the produce.
A small container of organic ones can cost $4 or $5, and half of them are already soft by the time you get home. Raspberry shortcake was the first dwarf thornless raspberry bred specifically for container growing, developed by a growing family in Oregon. It forms a neat mound, 2 to 3 feet pollinates itself. One plant in a 16 to 24-inch pot in full sun. That is the entire setup. The real harvest comes in the second summer from tall, needs no staking whatsoever, has no thorns, and canes that developed the previous year. It is not a massive yield, but it is steady, and they're knowing. First, in summer heat, this plant drinks heavily. There is something about eating raspberries warm off the plant that no store can replicate. 2 care points worth: you may need to water every single day. A self-watering container is one of the smartest investments you can make for this one. Second, when pruning, remove canes that already fruited and leave the fresh green ones. Cut the wrong canes and you eliminate next year's harvest entirely. When you calculate what fresh organic raspberries cost across a whole summer season, a couple of these plants earn back their investment quickly. 10. Dwarf pomegranate. This is the most forgiving plant on the entire list. The variety called Nana stays 2 to 4 feet tall, survives down to around 15 degrees, and is fully self-fertile. One plant does everything. There's also State Fair, which grows a bit larger and produces bigger edible fruit.
If you have room for a 20 to 25 gallon container, you can even grow the full-sized wonderful variety, the same kind sold in grocery stores. The Nana produces small, somewhat tart fruit and leans a bit ornamental in character. But the plant itself is genuinely beautiful, covered in bright orange-red flowers throughout summer, and it will give you a few dozen small fruits by year 3 or 4. Pomegranates actually perform well in containers because they tolerate slightly cramped roots, and once they settle in, they are remarkably drought-tolerant. You can miss a few waterings and the plant barely reacts. The main mistakes are overwatering, which rots roots quickly, and insufficient sun. It needs at least 6 hours of direct light to flower and fruit. In cold climates, it drops its leaves in fall, goes dormant, and spends winter in an unheated garage. Give it occasional water and roll it back outside in spring. 9. Columnar apples. These are among the most visually striking fruit trees you can grow. They rise straight up like a flagpole, 8 to 10 feet tall but less than 2 feet wide with barely any side branching. North Pole, Golden Sentinel, the Urban Apple series. You can arrange 3 or 4 along a narrow balcony and create an actual wall of apples in almost no footprint. But here's the trap that catches almost everyone, and it is the reason this one makes the list. Columnar apples are not self-pollinating, regardless of what the plant tag suggests. You can purchase one beautiful tree, water it faithfully for 3 years, and never see a single apple because there is no second tree nearby to provide pollen at the right time. Apples require a different apple variety blooming simultaneously in the same vicinity. The solution is straightforward. Plant 2 different columnar varieties together. They are so narrow that 2 of them still take up almost no space. A flowering crabapple in a neighbor's yard within range can also do the job. This one detail separates a productive tree from a decorative stick. North Pole is reliably cold hardy to 30 below, and a mature tree can produce over 50 apples. Plant them in a large half-barrel container, give them full sun, and they need very little pruning. With pollination sorted, these are one of the best choices for genuinely tight spaces. 8. Container peaches. A tree-ripened peach harvested by hand with juice running down your wrist, that experience alone is worth the effort. And yes, it is entirely achievable in a pot. But there are 2 specific ways people get this wrong, and both are fixable. First, variety selection. Buy a genetic dwarf, Bonanza, Honey Babe, or Golden Glory. These stay 4 to 6 feet tall on their own and are self-fertile. Do not accidentally purchase a standard peach on a dwarfing rootstock. That tree wants to be 10 or 12 feet tall and will always push against any attempt to contain it. The genetic dwarf is the actual container peach. Second, and this is the one that genuinely breaks people's hearts, chill hours. A peach tree needs a specific number of cold winter hours to trigger spring blooming. Keep it warm indoors all winter and it never gets that signal, so it never flowers. A peach cannot be a year-round houseplant. It must experience winter. Match your variety to your climate. Bonanza needs roughly 250 chill hours, which works for warmer regions.
Start in a 7 to 10 gallon pot and step up to 15 or 20 gallons over time. Full sun and well-draining soil always. Thin the fruit aggressively in spring, removing a third or more of the developing peaches, or you end up with a crowded cluster of small, flavorless ones. Prune each late winter by cutting back 30 to 40% of new growth to keep producing fresh fruiting wood. Stop fertilizing by August so the tree hardens off properly before cold weather arrives. 7. Romance Series cherries. Cherries have a reputation for requiring large trees, fussy conditions, and losing the entire crop to birds before you taste a single one. The Romance Series rewrites all of that. These came from the University of Saskatchewan and were specifically bred for brutal cold, zones 2 through 7, down to 40 below. Romeo, Juliet, and Carmine Jewel are the standout varieties. They are tart cherries but sweet enough to eat straight off the plant, and they stay 5 to 8 feet tall. Here is the number that stops people in their tracks. Nebraska Extension has documented a well-established Carmine Jewel producing 20 to 30 pounds of cherries from a single plant, from one bush. That is enough for fresh eating, pies, jam, and a bag in the freezer. They are self-fertile, so one plant produces fruit on its own, though adding a second nearby increases your yield noticeably.
A large container around 25 gallons or a half whiskey barrel works well. Full sun and well-draining soil always. They begin producing around year 3 and hit full stride by year 5, then keep going. Here is where a bush in a pot beats a large orchard tree completely. When your cherry is a 5-foot bush on the patio, you can throw a net over the entire thing in 5 minutes and the birds get nothing. Try netting a 30-foot orchard tree. You cannot. The birds always win. Plant an early variety like Carmine Jewel alongside a later one like Juliet, and you stretch your cherry season out by several weeks. And do not rush the harvest. Tart cherries continue getting sweeter the longer you leave them on the plant. 6. Ever-bearing strawberries. If you want the fastest return on this entire list, start here. Day-neutral strawberries, sometimes called ever-bearing, will give you fruit the very first season you plant them. Months, not years. The variety worth seeking out is Albion, which came from the breeding program at UC Davis. It has excellent flavor, produces dark, sweet fruit consistently, and shows solid disease resistance. Seascape is another strong choice, especially in eastern regions. Day neutrals do not dump everything at once. They produce in waves from late spring through fall, so instead of one big strawberry week, you are picking a handful every few days across the whole season. You do not need much space. A pot at least 10 to 12 inches deep or a standard 5-gallon bucket holds 3 to 5 plants comfortably. 6 to 8 hours of sun and steady moisture are the 2 requirements. 2 beginner mistakes to avoid. Do not bury the crown, that small growing center where leaves emerge. Plant it too deep and it rots. Keep it right at the soil surface. And remove the runners, those long stems with baby plants attached. Let them run and they redirect energy away from fruit production. Pinch them off and the plant channels everything into berries. Honest tip most people skip: treat these as 1 to 2 year plants. By the 3rd year, production and flavor drop noticeably. Pull the tired ones and replant fresh. It costs almost nothing and your harvest stays strong year after year. 5. Blueberries. These might be the single best container fruit on this whole list, but more people kill blueberries than any other plant here, and it comes down to one thing every time: soil pH. Blueberries require acidic conditions between 4.5 and 5.5 on the pH scale. Plant one in standard potting mix and you have essentially sentenced it to a slow decline. It will sit there looking yellow and miserable and eventually give up entirely. But here is the powerful flip side, and it is exactly why containers are ideal for blueberries. In a pot, you control the soil completely. Fill it with a mix made for acid-loving plants, the kind sold for azaleas and rhododendrons, and you can grow better blueberries than most farms manage in the ground. The thing that makes them difficult in the garden becomes simple in a pot. For varieties, Top Hat is a true dwarf purpose-built for containers, 1 to 2 feet tall, hardy to zone 3, and self-fertile. Sunshine Blue handles warmer climates and stays semi-evergreen. Both will yield around 5 to 10 pounds of berries at maturity. Put Top Hat in a 12 to 18-inch pot, give it 6 hours of sun, and keep it consistently moist. Blueberry roots are shallow and do not tolerate drying out. Mulch the top of the pot to hold moisture.
2 additional tips: feed only with an acid fertilizer and go light with it. Blueberries are sensitive and easy to overfeed. And test the pH a few times per year because it will drift. They are self-fertile, but adding a second variety nearby will increase your yield noticeably. 4. Bananas. Nothing makes visitors stop and stare like spotting a full banana plant growing in someone's backyard container. The varieties to look for are Dwarf Cavendish, the familiar grocery store style banana that stays 4 to 8 feet tall, and Super Dwarf Cavendish if you want something that can spend time indoors. They pollinate themselves, so you do not need 2 plants. Here is the unvarnished reality, because there is plenty of wishful thinking floating around about container bananas. They need 3 specific things to actually fruit: heat, intense light, and time. Outdoors in full sun through a warm summer in a 20 to 30 gallon pot, a dwarf banana can flower in roughly 9 to 15 months and produce a real bunch of fruit a few months after that. Kept in a dim indoor corner, fruiting becomes unreliable at best. If bananas off your own plant are the goal, they need to be outside in full sun for the growing season. They feed and drink heavily: rich soil, consistent water, plenty of potassium. In cold climates, bring the pot in before frost arrives. You can even cut the plant back and let it rest dormant in a basement over winter. Here is the detail that makes bananas special as a container plant. The main stalk fruits exactly once and then dies back,
but before it goes, it sends up shoots at the base called pups. Let one strong pup develop as the next producer and you have a continuous cycle. Pot up the extra pups and you have free plants to keep, give away, or sell. Banana plants move well at markets and plant sales. Part food production, part conversation piece. 3. Meyer lemon. If I could choose only one fruit tree for a patio, this might be it. Sweeter and less sharp than a standard lemon, compact enough for a manageable pot, self-fertile, and when it blooms, the fragrance coming off the flowers will stop you in your tracks. That scent alone justifies the space. Buy an improved Meyer and make sure it is a grafted tree, not one grown from seed. A grafted Meyer starts fruiting around year 2. A seedling can take 5 to 7 years and will be less vigorous throughout. Start in a 5-gallon pot and step up gradually to 15 or 25 gallons as the tree matures. Lemons in containers are actually easier to manage than lemons planted in the ground because you control every variable. Too cold? Roll it inside near a sunny window. Pests appearing? Isolate the pot and handle it. Here is the mistake that costs people their fruit crop. They bring the tree indoors when it is cold and leave it there too long. The blossoms open, but no pollinators reach them indoors, so the flowers simply drop without setting fruit. The fix takes 30 seconds. While it is flowering indoors, take a small brush and move pollen from flower to flower. That single habit is the difference between a tree full of lemons and a tree full of dropped blossoms. Fresh Meyer lemons at the store are expensive when you can even find good ones. A producing tree on your porch delivers a steady supply for the cost of almost nothing per year. 2. Avocados in a container. I understand how that sounds, but there is a genuine dwarf avocado that works in a pot. It is called Wurtz, sometimes sold under the name Little Cado. It is the only true dwarf avocado widely available, staying around 8 to 10 feet tall, and it is among the more reliable self-pollinators, meaning you can get fruit from a single tree. Start in a 15 to 20 gallon pot and move up as the tree grows. 2 honest things to say up front. First, patience is required. An avocado is not a quick return. You are looking at a year or 2 before it sets fruit and several years before you see a meaningful crop. But consider it this way, you are going to keep buying avocados regardless. Plant the tree today and in a few years it is producing instead of costing you money. Second, drainage is everything. Avocados are killed by wet roots more often than by any other cause. They need a fast-draining mix in a pot that never stays waterlogged. A fabric grow bag is an excellent choice here. Do not plant too deep and let the soil partially dry between waterings. To maximize fruit set, hand pollinate on a warm, dry morning when the tree is flowering. Take a soft brush and move pollen between blossoms. That habit can meaningfully increase how much fruit you get. In cold climates, bring it indoors before any frost risk arrives. Because it lives in a pot, people in regions that supposedly cannot grow avocados are growing them successfully anyway. 1. The fig. There is a reason it sits at the very top. As a container fruit tree, it is close to.
Get Chicago hardy if cold tolerance matters to you. The root system survives 10 below zero, which means it grows farther north than most people expect a fig to manage. Or go with a naturally compact variety like Little Miss Figgy or Petite Negra. Figs are entirely self-pollinating. You need one tree and nothing else. They fruit young, often in the first or second year, and because they produce on new growth, you can prune one back aggressively to keep it small and still get a full crop. Fresh figs at the grocery store, when you can even find decent ones, are expensive for what you get and usually disappointing in flavor. A fig ripened completely on your own tree is soft, deeply sweet, and one of the most satisfying things you will ever eat from a garden. A grower's tip worth remembering: as the figs are ripening, let the soil dry out slightly between waterings. The sugars concentrate and the flavor improves noticeably. But here's the real reason the fig earns the top spot. Figs root from cuttings almost effortlessly. Take a pencil-thick piece of dormant wood, press it into soil, and it grows into a complete new tree, and there is an actual market for them. Rooted common fig starts sell for around $10 at farmers markets. Cuttings from rare varieties trade for $20 and up. Rooted rare fig trees have sold online for $75 to $250 each. That one plant on your patio is not just feeding you, it is a quiet little propagation operation.
A handful of cuttings rooted each season and sold, and that plant has paid for itself many times over. That is the whole point of small space growing, turning limited space into food and sometimes into real income. The fig does both better than anything else on this list. Before you go buy plants, there is one final truth that quietly determines whether any of these 21 succeed or fail. It has nothing to do with the variety you choose. Everything in container fruit growing comes down to three things: the pot, the soil, and how you water. Get those right, and nearly anything on this list will thrive. Get them wrong, and even the toughest plant on the list will struggle. Match the container to the fully grown size of the plant, and step up gradually as it matures. Cramming a future 5-foot shrub into a tiny pot starves the roots. Never use soil dug from the yard or basic garden dirt. It compacts in a pot like concrete and suffocates the roots. Use a quality, lightweight potting mix. Make sure every container has real drainage holes, because more container fruit plants die from waterlogged roots than from cold or pests or disease combined. 2 habits that compound over time. Mulch the surface of every pot with 2 inches of wood chips or straw. It holds moisture, keeps roots cooler through summer heat, and slowly feeds the soil as it breaks down. Local tree services often give wood chips away free. They are usually glad to have someone take them. And feed on a schedule, because every time you water a container, you wash a small amount of fertility out through the drainage holes. A plant in a pot cannot go searching for nutrition the way one in the ground can. You have to bring the nutrition to it consistently. One last practical note on containers. Fabric grow bags work beautifully for trees you plan to keep for years. The roots air prune at the edges instead of circling around the inside, which keeps the root structure healthy. The trade-off is they dry out faster in summer heat, so you will water more frequently. Rigid pots hold moisture longer and insulate roots better through cold winters. Neither choice is wrong. Know the trade-off and water accordingly. That is 21 fruit plants you can grow on a balcony, a patio, a porch, or a strip of concrete barely wider than a parking space. No acreage required, no enormous budget, no years of experience needed before you start. You do not need land to grow real food. You need one pot, the right plant, and the decision to actually begin. Pick one from this list that genuinely excites you. The fig, the blueberries, the Meyer lemon, whatever pulls your attention. Start there. One plant teaches you more than any amount of watching. If my channel delivered something useful today, hit that like button and let us know in the comments what you are already growing in a container or which one you are planting next. Someone scrolling by right now needs to see that this is possible. Show them it is. See you on the next one.